Okay, so we're going to call to order the audit board, and it's a three-person committee. We've got a quorum, and what I think we'll do is have a brief description of what the purpose of the audit board is, call on Mr. Cooper for that, and then somebody can set the stage about what's led us to be here, and then we can talk about next steps. And so, Mr. Cooper, I understand that there's a pretty narrow function of the audit board under the Metro Charter. Can you talk to us about what that is?
Yes, under 6.15 of the Charter, the audit board has one job, and that's to select an independent auditor for the government. This provision was put into the charter when it was approved in '63, so it's been that's been the process since then.
Can you describe who the members of the audit board are?
It consists of three people. It's the chair of the Council Budget and Finance Committee, the presiding officer of the council, which is the vice mayor, and the chair of the Board of Education.
All right, and I guess next, who would be appropriate to tell us? I understand the contract of the current is currently expired for external audit. Maybe you can talk to us about those details.
Right. Yeah. The history has been that every 5 years we would go through an RFP process like with any other metro procurement, and the evaluation committee would make a recommendation to the audit board as to who should be awarded the contract. And so for the last two cycles, Crossland has been the recommended auditor and selected. So this is the last of, or the June 30, 19 audit was the last of essentially a 10-year cycle for Crossland, which was two different contracts. So we're at that point where, again, based on the historical practice, we would do another RFP, go through that process, and present to you guys to make that selection.
And tell us about who's the evaluation committee?
It varies. It would typically be someone from finance operations who is kind of the primary contact with Crossland. I think in the past, somebody from schools, they're such a large part of the audit, would be a part of it. I'd have to go back and see, but it would be probably representatives of different metro departments that are pretty key to the audit and kind of a financial piece.
So I've been a little, thank you. I understand that's what happened. To me, that's, and I'm interested in Mr. Cooper's thoughts on that. It's odd to me that the folks being audited would get together and make the recommendation about who to hire as the auditor, as opposed to, it seems like the structure of the charter would be that it would be a series of relatively high-ranking elected officials that would make the decision. So I'm just wondering about whether anybody sees any tension between having people who are being audited making a single recommendation. Mr. Cooper, what do you think about that?
I mean, the charter doesn't speak to how the auditor is selected or the process, whether you even do a competitively bid process. Your point is well taken about those who are directly working with the auditor being on the selection panel. I see where you're coming from.
Well, I guess, so would it be up to the audit board to decide how the process goes?
I think the audit board controls the process, totally.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to ask who typically picks? Who picks the evaluation team? Is it procurement, or is it up to us to pick?
Yeah,
or do we
again,
know?
I think historically, as we said, the audit board hasn't really been that much of that process. So I think it's been probably coming out of finance operations to reach out to those departments who are, again, the auditees and select that evaluation committee.
All right, but it sounds like we can actually
We can decide.
We can decide.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
And then the last, I think, thing we need to hear, our city's new finance director, Kevin Crumbo, and I have had a brief offline conversation that I hope he can share the details with. That there might be reasons about processes that are going on where a change in auditor at this time might not make sense. And I get the words wrong, but it's the something implementation.
The implementation of the Oracle R12
Yeah.
enterprise software, which includes our accounting, financials, and that sort of thing. Yeah, so you want just to dive in there?
Yeah,
a little
please
bit?
do.
So, yeah, look, it's kind of apparent to me, I mean, this is a process that's chartered, but it seems to be a bit adrift because you've got some change in council members and the way the board would be, as well as just a long passage of time between when you procure something, which is more of a financial issue to me than, hey, who picks this and who gets the job done? Because an audit of financial statements by an external auditors, more than just like looking for something that might be wrong, rather it's really helpful to the management team in particular to say, look, here's what we've found or not found in your financials. Here are internal controls, things you can work on, and that's usually a very welcome thing by responsible financial managers. Here, I think we have some facts and circumstances that are unusual for any organization, and particularly for a metro government. And just in a nutshell, we clearly have had a bad budget year. We've had a comptroller come visit. I think we're all aware of those facts and circumstances. And as part of an original arrangement with the comptroller in this last year for 2019, we made a big push to deliver the audit report, the single audit report and supporting schedules at a much earlier date than we really have in the past, at least a portion of that. And Crossland did a remarkable job of stepping up to those deadlines, even as they were cast on you really at the last moment, and did that inclusive of the ongoing implementation of this very complex, expensive system that we have. And so headed into this next year, what would be, I think, very helpful and very stabilizing for all things comptroller, all things implementation, is to continue with the same firm we have, knowing that they've done a good job for us. I did speak with the comptroller's office. They said they'd be delighted to see Crossland continue this for at least another year. And I think that we can just work with Crossland just as we always have, and I think it also provide a little cush time for this committee to come back and say, okay, from now on, here's how we're going to govern, and we'll make sure that we get people to the meetings and just have a good, healthy process going forward. Something that always surrounds these rotations, different to procurement, is the notion about auditor rotations. You hear quite a lot about that. There's really two flavors of that. There's rotating a firm entirely in and out of an organization, but also common practice is simply to rotate the audit partners or maybe some of the senior team that works on it. Both are very effective strategies. I really am indifferent as to which one it is from a theoretical standpoint. As a matter of practicality, I think you have to look at the size of the firm and how much difference do you get at a smaller firm versus a larger firm. But I think that we shouldn't be dismissive of procurement process alongside of the notion of rotation. I think there's a lot to think about for both of those, and they're generally separate issues in my view.
And Mr. Crossland, I know, was it, you guys rotated the partner in charge, and you just wrapped up the second year after the rotation? Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, that is a big, if you don't mind me speaking
Please.
for me.
Yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, the firm, there are people out there that like to rotate firms. I think largely it's a misnomer of best practice. Really, the rotation of the partner is really considered in our industry as best practice. We see both sides of this, so I don't really have here today, clearly I have an advantage not to rotate firms, but generally speaking, we get as many as we lose when there's rotations of firms, so I don't really have an objective there, generally speaking. But I think where it all rooted from was SEC companies are required to rotate partners every 5 years, and somehow it's kind of morphed into this rotating firms. But if you look, the last figure I saw, if you look at the S&P 500, the average length of an audit firm is like 24 and a half years. There's Procter & Gamble, there's companies that have had the same auditors for 100 years. Literally, HCA's had EY for 50 years or so. So I think if we have that rotation of partner, and I don't think for next year, unless you think otherwise, if we're rehired, it's appropriate, just because I've only been on it for 2 years, but we certainly have a number of partners that could that could handle this,
Yeah,
this
just
job.
a deeper technical layer here is that even within a firm, you have both internal partner reviews to make sure that with the test functions that they're being well managed, but also peer reviews from other firms that are common. And in this instance, I mean, Crossland's done a marvelous job. I know you do those things internally and
We
externally.
just went through our peer review last month, and
Yeah,
Metro's
it's-
always chosen.
Yes, I just kind of come back to the facts and circumstances here. I think are compelling to continue with this, and then as we, I think all agree, this committee can come back and determine how it wants to manage itself in the future.
So I guess my question is, do we have the authority, if we wanted to continue with Crossland for another year,
Yes.
to do that?
There are no limitations. The firm just has to be an accounting firm, the members of which have no personal interest, direct or indirect, in the fiscal affairs of the Metro government or any of its departments or agencies. So as long as they're not tied to Metro, it can be any firm for any length.
So if we continued it for a year, assuming that that would be okay with Crossland, and then we could do the RFP in the second year, which would give us time to get ready for that, and then that would be our process. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, and I think the only thing I would add into that would be, first of all, we got to talk about price, about extending it for a year. And then secondly, I think we'd probably want this group to meet summer, early fall, to figure out how we want to have the selection process run, whether it's the same way in the past or something different. And maybe we could ask the professionals to, I'm sure Crossland would recommend something too, just to get us some ideas about different options within the framework of the city government. Maybe we'll do it the same way it has been, but I think we should at least think about the options.
But that would give us time, if we extend it for a year,
Right.
give us time to meet again in the summer or whatever and figure out, okay, what process do we want to utilize?
I think
Okay
so.
with me.
Well, let me ask about cost. Same cost as last year? What?
We haven't discussed that, but, I mean, I'd be fine with that.
What finance? Do you have a thought on that?
I'm actually pleased to hear that.
I mean,
A little higher.
generally, we creep up 1 or 2% just to keep up with, quite frankly, inflation. I mean, we give our people raises too, you know.
We don't give our people raises.
The cost of our folks do go up. So we usually like to go up a little bit. But,
Well, let me ask you this. So
and
if,
we have partners too that are involved
Yeah,
that we have to,
so you had a five-year contract, or was it a 1 year with extensions every year?
It's 5 years.
What was it?
we had a 5.
And was there anything in the contract, in the current, the contract that we just had, that had a built-in escalator every year?
I don't believe so. I'd
I
have
think
to
it
go
was
back
a
and look. It was
predefined
it was
cost
a
for each year.
predefined
I don't know
cost
that
for
it
each of
really
the 5
considered
years.
For each of the 5 years, but was there, I mean, I guess what I
was
was
it
looking
flat
at.
or did it go up?
Yeah, did it go up every year?
It did.
Based upon some type of,
The last 2 years the same?
I think it increased the first couple of years and then it stayed consistent.
I think so,
believe.
yeah.
I need to pull the contract to confirm that.
Can I,
Yes, sir.
having been a partner in one of these firms locally, some more size and so forth, I think would be reasonable is to add 2 percentage points or so to the contract that they currently have, because he's right, there is the inflationary cost of doing it, but frankly, we asked so much of them last year that I know that had a cost to you, and your profits were probably not a lot lower, but some lower than they would have been otherwise because of the overtime and things you put on the job, and we're going to need that again this year. The deadlines are going to be all the same, but the job's frankly bigger because of the implementation process. So I'd suggest that to the committee as a reasonable way to go forward, because I know that's what I would do if I were at that firm.
it's coming from the
Finance
budget guy.
director.
Yeah. I mean, we're being tight with everything, but if he thinks that's okay, then
You want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion. So I don't know so it's a 2 is, when you say 2 percentage points, what does that mean? Does that mean your hourly rate? I'm not sure how it applies in this particular situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty much just a fixed fee. There's some consideration if you were to have to do more work than you had expected, but I think it would just be on top of that fixed fee.
Yeah.
Is what I would
There's,
expect.
in the single audit, if there's a certain number of major programs, there's an escalator, X amount of dollars for each major. I don't think we will reach that this coming year.
Okay.
So it would just be what the flat fee is plus 2%.
Do you think that's reasonable?
Then I make that motion.
I second that motion.
Somebody else here, Bob.
Sounds like, well, I guess we'll just go ahead and all.
You want to argue over it?
Is there any discussion?
I'll just interject one thing for the record to help you. So the single audit report is the one that you have to work on so hard after the regular audit's finished. And to do this and meet the expectations of the comptroller now, Crossland's having to work its folks over the holidays pretty hard, right? I mean, I saw the date stamps on the emails, time stamps and so forth, and that has a cost to it. And if we're going to meet that this next year, I think it's going to be tough. And as we get into that routine, it should get easier. But in the middle of the systems implementation, I know you've got substantially higher costs than you would have otherwise.
All right, with that rousing recommendation
So
from the finance
it's a
director.
one-year contract. Do we call it an extension, or is it a brand?
Just a one-year
A
contract.
one-year contract with the 2% added. Okay,
I second that. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
It passes. So that's official action of the
Taking the action
Metro.
required by charter.
All right.
Suggest you schedule your next meeting.
So how does that get then documented, or does it need to be documented? I mean, we got video, but
I think we could do a letter from the chair to the finance director documenting the action that was taken, and I'll draft that.
that sounds awesome.
Did somebody take minutes from this meeting?
I think
I think
John,
that's what I just did.
I know, that's what I was thinking.
do you, rather than picking a time, how about we ask Mr. Cooper to get a time in August for us to get together and have a conversation?
That's
again?
fine, that's fine, because I'm not sure what I'll be doing in August
Or September.
or September.
August or September, just for us to get
Okay, I'll
together.
have Danielle send out another fantastic doodle poll
Yeah.
that Elise can fill out for me.
And for the, I mean, we've got finance, legal, our outside auditor, our internal audit folks. Whenever we have this next meeting, I think we are going to be looking for recommendations from whoever among the group about what our options are for doing the selection process. And I'll just go ahead and tell you that my sense is that rather than getting a single I don't want to do all the legwork because I don't know if we have time to do all the legwork, but it seems like getting a couple, 2-3 recommendations as opposed to a single recommendation puts the audit board in a position where it's making the actual decision rather than Metro audited departments making the decision.
So what I think we ought to do, once we figure out when the date of the meeting is, send out a notice to everybody and say, do you want them in advance? I mean, if there's suggestions,
Sure.
or you want them,
Yeah,
okay.
that'd be great.
So if people have ideas,
That's a good idea.
send them to the chair or to Mr. Cooper. And so we can actually look at them and go, well, yeah, we kind of like those ideas.
And I guess the last thing, Mr. Cooper's, let's actually aim for August because depending on what the vice mayor does, I might not be the chair of the committee, Budget and Finance, after August. And so I'd like to decide something before the end of August.
Okay.
I have
Please.
I have such immense power as the vice mayor. It's the one thing I actually can do.
All right, so we don't have any other business, is that right? All right,
We don't have any other purpose, right?
we don't. Literally
Then
don't.
I guess we have no other business. I move to adjourn.
All right, we're adjourned.
Okay.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.net.